From October 1994 to July of 1996, a twisted killer murdered 4 women in Trenton, New Jersey. This vicious monster lured his victims into his power with the promise of drugs. Once they were in his vehicle and in a secluded spot, he would draw a knife and assault them. When he was done, he strangled them and dumped their bodies. Anthony Balaam, the Trenton Strangler. Anthony Balaam was born on July 9, 1965, in Trenton, New Jersey. It is said that he was severely abused as a child, which may have led to the drug addiction, which was a major component of the murders. He was married for 10 years during this time and had 2 daughters despite his addiction to crack cocaine. Neighbors and acquaintances, including his ex-wife, said that Balaam was a quiet and polite person. At 5'8" and less than 150 pounds, he is not an intimidating figure, which along with his meek demeanor, likely gave his victims a sense of security when he picked them up. As a quick side note, police described him as 5'5" after he was arrested. However, his prison records put his height at 5'8". There was a brief period in 1995 when he moved to Detroit after he had committed his first 3 known murders. But in January of 1996, he moved back to Trenton. 7 months later, he would commit his last known murder. Police in Detroit stated that they do not believe he committed any murders while there. There is no way to know for sure based on the type of victims that Balaam selected. Anthony Balaam had been arrested for various offenses related to his drug use. These included arrest for possession and burglary. He was also visiting prostitutes while on drug-fueled benders and robbed his victims to obtain more crack. His first murder occurred on one of these night drives in 1994. In the early morning hours of October 24th, Balaam was cruising the streets of a seedy neighborhood in Trenton, high on crack. He came across Karen Denise Patterson. The 41-year-old was working the streets, and when she was offered drugs in return for her services, she agreed and climbed into Balaam's vehicle. He took her to a secluded area and established what would become his MO for the future murders. Balaam pulled a knife on the woman and violated her by force. He then strangled her and left her body in a vacant parking lot. 5 months later, on March 19, 1995, Balaam was once again on the prowl. He picked up 29-year-old Valentina Kyler, and the two made a deal to exchange crack for adult services. Once they were away from witnesses, Anthony assaulted her at knife point before strangling her and dumping her remains. Unable to restrain himself, Balaam was once again in search of a victim less than 1 month later. On April 10, 1995, he came across 27-year-old Connie Hayward as he stalked the streets of Trenton. He lured her into his car with promises of drugs, and the two made their way to a cheap motel. Once there, he repeated the process that was becoming a routine. Miss Hayward's body was later found at the motel. This was when he left Trenton and moved to Detroit. Whether he recognized his own loss of control or wanted to avoid a potential arrest for the murders is not known. What is known is that he soon came back to New Jersey in January of 1996. For the short time that Balaam was away from Trenton, it seems he was able to hold himself back, and there are no known murders until late July of 1996. He had a roommate and was unemployed during this time, and perhaps due to frustration at his own situation, his childhood abuse, or simply his addiction, Balaam was once again looking for his next victim when he was back in Trenton. On February 16, 1996, the sick monster picked up a woman with the same depraved plan as he had with his previous victims. Thankfully, the woman was able to escape before he could strangle her and reported the attack. She would play an important role in identifying the vicious creature. On July 29, 1996, he picked up 37-year-old Deborah Ann Walker as she worked the street. Once again, Balaam and Walker made an agreement to exchange drugs for her services, and like his previous 3 murders, he strangled her after abusing her at knife point. This time, the killer left the body quite close to his own residence, where it was discovered by one of his neighbors only hours later. Investigators soon zeroed in on Balaam as a potential suspect. When brought in for questioning, he calmly admitted to the murders and described the hate and rage he felt which drove him to kill. His confession was confirmed when police brought in his surviving victim, who was able to readily identify him as her attacker. After conferring with Detroit police to determine if there were additional murders that could be attributed to Balaam, investigators charged him with 4 murders, assault, robbery, and weapons possession. However, the last 2 charges were later dropped. His trial was long and drawn out, lasting until January of 2001. He was found guilty of the 4 murders and received 30 years to life. He was also found guilty of 4 counts of aggravated sexual assault, for which he received up to 15 years. Anthony Balaam is currently housed at the New Jersey State Prison in Trenton, and his earliest possible parole date is August 4th, 2116.